must be lying, can it really be? Can't conceive it, can't believe it, but that's what they say. Slave no longer, this is Freedom Day. Freedom Day, it's Freedom Day. Throw those shackling chains away. Everybody that I see says it's really true if free. Whisper, listen, whisper, say we're free. Rumors flying, must be lying, can it really be? Can't conceive it, don't believe it, but that's what they say. Slave no longer, this is Freedom Day. Freedom Day, it's Freedom Day. Throw those shackling chains away. Everybody that I see says it's really true. We're free, Freedom Day. to vote and earn my pay. Dim my path and hide the way, but we made it Freedom Day.
Good afternoon. We are so delighted to have you here with us this afternoon for the Christ African Theological Institute annual Juneteenth virtual conference. We have been doing this conference since 2021, since I have been the director of the Christ African Theological Institute. My name is Lakeisha Harrison, and it is a pleasure to have each and every one of our panelists and our attendees here for the afternoon session of our conference. For those who are not familiar, and to recap for those who were on with us this morning during our keynote session, CATI, as we affectionately call the Christ African Theological Institute, was founded by our pastor emeritus, Dennis Wiley, quite some time ago, long before I started at Covenant, let alone became director of this institute, as an opportunity to engage in discussions and to engage in mutual educational conversations between the churched, the unchurched, those with theological background and those without, those of us in leadership positions and those who are part of the laity of the church and of the community, all of us in conversation together to mutually learn from one another, to grow with one another as we talk through, discuss, and wrestle with major social justice issues of today, issues related to our identity as African people. And the conference that we began with in 2021 has consistently focused on our identities as African Americans and the Black American Church in the United States in conversation with our family across the diaspora, including the African continent, and about the African continent and the African diaspora. We have had speakers in conversation across the waters from South Africa, Tanzania, and many other places. And this afternoon, we're going to be talking about Cuba. Because we know that we people of African descent and African identity span the entire globe, and we are interconnected as one people. So as we observe Juneteenth, it is our obligation to continue examining what liberation means today and liberation for all God's people, particularly people of African descent around the world. And so as our pastor was in conversation with me about what we would discuss this year, one of the things he said is he wanted to look at how the rest of the world is seeing us right now in the United States related to US aggression around the world. What do people think of us here? And that is how we came to our theme, All Eyes on Us, and how people are perceiving us as American citizens, but in particular, how our family of the diaspora sees us as citizens of the United States and what we're doing or not doing, what we're saying or not saying about US aggression around the world. And in particular, as people of faith, how we're looking at what's happening with the US in the world, and Jesus's call for us to be on the side of the oppressed, on the side of the marginalized, and engage in acts of justice in order to right or solve or end injustice. Now, of course, we're not going to solve all of those problems here today, but we are going to have a rich conversation with our afternoon panelists. I am so excited for us to have the lineup of panelists that we have today for this afternoon session. This morning's keynote session was great, and this afternoon session is going to be great as well. So this afternoon, we are going to be in conversation with at least two panelists who have joined us before. Our first virtual conference in 2021 featured Mr. Melvin Foote as part of our keynote panel, and he is joining us again this afternoon for our session today. And the Reverend Dr. Jonathan Weaver was part of our conference in 2022. And he is joining us again this afternoon today. And we are also going to be joined by Denise Rolark Barnes, who is a new panelist for us here with this Juneteenth conference, but not new to our covenant family. She is indeed a part of our covenant family, and she is a dear friend of our church and of the Christ African Theological Institute. They will be moderated by our very own pastor, Pastor William Young. And after I introduce him, our session will continue with him in conversation with our panelists on our topic about Cuba today. But let me introduce you or remind others about who our pastor is. He was born in Louisville, Kentucky, and is a preacher's kid himself. And he grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, where he attended and graduated from the School for Creative and Performing Arts. For those of you who may not be familiar with him, he is a singer. He is a trained tenor. But as a child, as much as he was pursuing his passion for the arts, God put a calling on his spirit at the age of 9 when he was licensed to preach as a child at the tender age of 9. And he went on to continue his studies and be mentored by in the era of in the field of civil rights, and was raised in the church and social justice at the same time. He received his Bachelor of Arts degree from the American Baptist College, and he continued his education at Vanderbilt University Divinity School, where he received his Master of Divinity in 2003. And he was associate minister at Jefferson Street Missionary Baptist Church while he was there, where he was also ordained. And then, for those of you who may not be familiar with his story, he also has served overseas. So he is not unfamiliar with global ministry and the global context. He moved to the United Kingdom in 2004, where he studied at Birmingham University in England and received an MA degree in global political economy and a Master of Theology from Edinburgh University in Scotland, as well as a Master of Philosophy from Glasgow University in Scotland. And he was assigned as assistant minister at St. Giles Cathedral in Edinburgh, as well as a chaplain to the Queen. And he organized the first Martin Luther King Day observance, as well as the first Jazz Vespers service in the cathedral. And in 2013, he was ordained as a minister of Word and Sacraments in the United Reformed Church. And from 2013 to 2020, before he was called here to Covenant back in the United States, he served as senior minister for 2 congregations while he was in Glasgow. And we are thankful that God called him to Covenant United Church of Christ as our pastor since 2020. Yes, he started as our pastor in 2020 in the middle of a pandemic. And he was baptized by fire, as some would say. And we are thankful that he was able to make it here in person finally in 2021. So I will turn things over now to our pastor, Reverend William T. Young IV, to guide our conversation this afternoon. Welcome, Pastor.
Thank you, Dr. Harrison. Good afternoon or good day, everybody who's watching, whenever you are watching. As she said, this is a bit of a reunion this afternoon. And if you don't mind, I'd like to dedicate this session to a dear member of our congregation. We don't have a mother's board at this church, but there are certain people that we just certainly look up to as spiritual mothers. And Mother Clara Jenkins is one of those people. She immigrated to the United States from Cuba over 60 years ago, and she's been a member of Covenant for over 50 years as well. And so, as we're thinking of her homeland, we're thinking of her as well. We honor her and we wish her well, Sister Clara Jenkins. So we turn this afternoon to that land betwixt and between, as Dr. Carruthers said this morning, betwixt and between our continents, the people of Cuba, which has been, of course, part of this nation's colonial past for over a century. Once again, Cuba is on our radars again due to an inhumane energy crisis that is sparking something of a catastrophe for those people. Perhaps for the first time since the death of Fidel Castro, relations between the United States and Cuba have taken a fevered pitch, taken us all back to a colonial state of mind, moving from those decades of oppression to a downright time of cruelty created by our own government. And so, even as we think of the countless ways in which our nation, our people here have been suffering through the ongoing DC occupation, the presence of ICE and National Guard, the stripping of our rights to vote and our protections for immigrants, we're also forced to think as well about how our neighbors and siblings in Latin America and the Caribbean are suffering as well. As Dr. Carruthers suggested to us this morning, it's incumbent upon all of us to think about all of the diaspora and how we can mobilize during this historic time together. I first went to Cuba. I was interested in this session because I first went to Cuba in 2003 when Fidel Castro was still very much in power, and life there was even then on a thin line between prosperity and destitution. But then it was still on a curve upwards towards some kind of prosperity. But today there is a wholesale scheme by our government to not simply paralyze Cuba, but to destroy the people of that land. And so have mercy on us, have mercy on the United States on this eve. Many will be watching this session in the days before the eve of the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. So have mercy on us for the cruelty that we are causing in other nations. But I'm excited about the panel that we have. I will truly some of the great and good of the DMV who were delegates to that recent fact-finding mission to Cuba. I'll introduce them first and then show a video, about 12 minutes, to give us an introduction to the energy crisis. But on to our very distinguished panelist. The gentleman suggested ladies should go first. So I'll call out Denise Rolog Barnes, who is one of the queens of Southeast, one of the queens of the District of Columbia, certainly the CEO of the Washington Informer, keeping that family business going. Her father, the late Calvin Rolard, founded the newspaper in 1964. She's also president of the Washington Informer Charities and a member of numerous boards locally and nationally. For many years, she's been known as a chief organizer of the DC Martin Luther King holiday events in January every year. And of course, Covenant serves on that committee. So she's no stranger to us, no stranger to the community. Certainly her mother-in-law, Wilhelmina Rolark, for many years was Ward 8 counselor and had her offices here in the church. So we welcome Denise Rolark Barnes back.
Yeah, thank you so
Covenant.
much, Pastor Young. And one thing, Wilhelmina was my stepmother, actually.
Oh,
Mother-in-law.
I'm
Yeah, that's
I
okay.
said that wrong.
That's all right.
My sincerest apologies for
That's
that.
all right.
Um,
I don't want her up there saying, what? You know how it
yeah,
is.
she's already cussing me out, I'm sure. Yeah. Um, But next we have Brother Melvin Foote, one of the great African diplomats of our time. When he is not running on the Frederick Douglass Bridge, as I've seen him many times in passing, he is the founder and president of the Constituency for Africa, 25-year-old network of organizations, groups, and individuals committed to the progress and empowerment of Africa and African peoples worldwide. He also serves as a consultant to the World Bank on African diaspora issues and is an advisor to the African Union's ambassador to the United States. We welcome him indeed. And then lastly, they suggested that we added some people here. And so so by popular demand, we are honored to have once again with us in this Juneteenth conference, the Reverend Dr. Jonathan Weaver, who is now recently retired as the pastor of the Greater Mount Nebo AME Church in Bowie, Maryland, and as presiding elder of the Potomac District within the Washington Conference of the AME Church. But he has assured us that although he is retired from full-time pastoral ministry, he continues his work, advocacy work with Africa. He's a founder of the Pan-African Collective, an organization that promotes educational, social, and economic relationships between Americans and the people of Africa. He has led more than a dozen medical mission trips to Rwanda, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Malawi, and Haiti, resulting in more than 30,000 people receiving much needed medical care and nutritional support. There's even a school named after him in DRC in honor of his work there, the Weaver School in Goma in Congo. 1,300 pupils, all of whom are orphans, children of rape survivors, or children of refugees. We welcome Dr. Weaver as well into this conversation. So we have a very interdisciplinary panel from the realms of journalism, from the realms of diplomacy, and the church. So let's watch very quickly, briefly, this video that'll give some insight for those who don't know everything that has gone on in Cuba in the last several months.
Cuba remains an incredibly important and influential country in the Caribbean. Its problems, though, with fuel supplies, with an economy that's crumbling and a health service doesn't work, has gone on for decades, of course, though it's definitely getting worse because of the oil blockade that President Trump has imposed.
Hay muchas cosas que funcionan a través de combustible y entonces a la vez que no tenemos combustible estamos prácticamente paralizados.
A lot of people say it's worse than it's ever been.
Now, the president has said that he expects to focus his attention on Cuba after he's dealt with Venezuela, of course, and Iran.
I do believe I'll be having the honor of taking Cuba.
Certainly, we know that the Americans and the Cubans are talking. But what does this all mean for the people of Cuba? What will this country look like when the blockade is lifted?
This is Havana, the capital of Cuba.
We're 3 months into a US oil blockade, and life is unraveling here faster than anyone predicted. This is right in the heart of the city, and through the rubbish bins, they search for anything of value and anything worth eating. Some collected in bags, slowly working their way through the mounds of rubbish, seeking out discarded food and vegetables rotting beneath the blistering sun, sifting out what they can scavenge from here. These aren't necessarily homeless people, but they are desperate people. Others can't wait, inspecting the food, then eating it. It's that desperate. There's been incredible poverty here in Cuba for a long time, but this type of open desperation hasn't existed here for many years. What people have been telling me is that streets of Havana are famous for always being really clean, even though the people are really poor. But things have got worse, and as a lady was just explaining to me, this is here because the normal refuse people, the bin men, haven't got petrol to actually come and pick up the rubbish. So past lots of street corners, and it's like this. Since the start of the year, the United States has imposed an oil blockade on the country, meaning no fuel is allowed in. But it doesn't mean there's just a shortage of fuel. It means that everything falls apart. There's now a growing food crisis. Cubans are going hungry. This is economic warfare, every bit as destructive to life here as bombs and bullets would be. The homeless sleeping rough in back alleys is now a common sight where it was once unthinkable. People have to queue to get money from cash machines. There's a money supply issue in Cuba. That means there's strict limits on what can be withdrawn. Often, there is no money to be withdrawn anyway. People also queue for hours to get bread from barely functioning government-controlled bakeries. They're limited to one piece a person when there is any to be had. This is a government ration shop known as a bodega. They're meant to provide essentials at cheap prices. The shelves are virtually bare. While we filmed, an emergency load of rice was being delivered. This is humanitarian aid. Cuba can't produce enough of its own. What we found was that more often than not, the bodega stores were completely empty or shut in this current crisis. Pharmacies as well have just empty shelves. This one appears to be open, but it seems there's virtually nothing in stock. With the Cuban state failing to find a way of dealing with this crisis, it's fallen on charities to provide some help. The community of Sant'Egidio Charity is now trying to feed a growing number of the most vulnerable. The elderly and homeless line up for a bowl of pasta, dished up by volunteers 3 times a week. It's a lifeline to these men and women. The charity's resources are stretched and limited. Well, the statistics vary, but somewhere between 72% and 90% of people in Cuba live in extreme poverty. And about 3/4 say that they miss at least one meal a day because they simply can't afford to buy the food. They just haven't any ways of getting to it. For these people, the most vulnerable in society, this is the absolute lifeline. This is possibly the only proper meal they're going to get today for certain, but maybe for large parts of the rest of the week. Linares Suarez Cardenas, the charity's charismatic senior manager, says this crisis is getting worse. They're now feeding children opening schools and trying to provide medical care. They never used to do this before. Life has been tough in Cuba for many years, she says, but the US blockade is pushing it over the edge.
First off, how important are these meals for these people here?
Tener una buena alimentación. Es muy probable que si no almuerza aquí, cuando en su casa lo que coma es un pan solamente, no es que un anciano pueda tener recursos económicos como para almorzar, desayunar, comer, merendar. Entonces esto es como, no es una gran ayuda, pero es algo que por lo menos reciben una alimentación.
There have been periods of time where there have been crises in Cuba's history, Soviet Union, COVID. Is this a major crisis period once again?
Sí, sí. Esto es un momento de crisis por muchas razones. Es decir, la falta de combustible, la situación de la luz, todas estas cosas. Es decir, la persona no puede ni siquiera conservar el poco alimento que pueda resolver. Entonces, los precios suben.
Do you think that the fuel blockade by the United States is making things much worse?
La situación del combustible inmoviliza, te hace, no puedes moverte, tienes que estar si te cierra un poco, te limita mucho. Y hay muchas cosas que funcionan a través del combustible. Y entonces, a la vez que no tenemos combustible, estamos prácticamente paralizados. Si en muchos lugares, por ejemplo, de acogida, han tenido que cerrar porque no tienen cómo.
Every economic sector in Cuba is being affected by this blockade, and one of the most obvious casualties is tourism. Sparkling classic cars, typical of virtually every image you've probably seen of Havana and renovated for tours of the city, now stand empty. Their drivers desperate for business. Historic squares are all but empty of the foreign visitors who throng these streets. Souvenir shops and markets are now displaying their wares to virtually nobody but the odd passerby. Tourism industry brought billions of dollars of hard cash to Cuba. That vital foreign currency arriving on its shores is slowly but surely drying up. President Trump's threats, the continuous talk of war, the events in Venezuela and Iran, and the lack of fuel for airplanes is taking its toll. The band may still be playing, but they've lost their audience. A reminder of this country's past status can be seen in the magnificence of old Havana, with its beautiful ornate neoclassical mansions, Art Deco buildings, and Baroque churches that marked out Cuba as a special place for hundreds of years. To a degree, it still exists at first glance. Yeah, it has a lovely feeling about it, that Spanish colonial look. Parts of the centre of downtown in the old city are in good nick. But actually, a little bit more closely in Havana, these are some of the most iconic buildings, hotels, that are actually completely and utterly destroyed, emptied. It looks more like a war zone than a major city, the capital of a country. Sort of, you have to scratch beneath the veneer here. You don't have to scratch very far. You see just how much trouble Cuba is in. The truth is, the buildings are neglected and slowly falling into ruin. In the midst of this once magnificent city, many of its people are living in squalor, clinging onto existence in buildings from a different era. It all adds to the sense that this large Caribbean island, a dominant cultural and political symbol, and still regarded by its island neighbors as a regional powerhouse, is being strangled because of its political inclinations that took root here a couple of generations ago. Observers, neutral or otherwise, agree people can't continue to live like this. The current fuel embargo is quite simply collective punishment on a mass scale. President Trump says Cuba is next, but nobody here, and perhaps not even in the White House, have any idea what next means. The merry-go-round of threats, sanctions, blockades, and sometimes negotiations about the future go on. When it stops, is there even a future for this generation? Is there even a plan?
That was from a report about 2 months ago. But some of those images obviously were very graphic, and I know that sometimes this is from Sky News in the UK. And I know sometimes Western media can over exaggerate things to tug at our heartstrings. So I'll simply ask, first of all, Denise, if you could let us know what you saw there. Do some of these scenes correspond to what you saw there, yeah, do some of this correspond to what you saw there?
Yeah, I would say, and thank you very much, Pastor Young, for allowing me to be on this panel and to join Pastor Weaver and Melvin Foote. I will say that this was my third trip to Cuba. And when I first arrived, I said, wow, this is Cuba, and I love Cuba. I love the people. I love the music. I love the spirit. Um, and I will say that what this showed is some of what we saw, but the story, the um, I forget the word, but what the words behind the images, I think are a little different. And so before we get too deep, I would say if anybody's thinking about going to Cuba, go, right? Just go. It's almost like the neighborhood I live in Southeast DC. And what people always say about Ward 8 in Southeast and folks won't come. Come, you know, be a part of the people, know the people and see the culture and listen. So yeah, I was the first 2 or 3 days in, and some of those places I remembered, we visited ourselves as we walked through the streets of Havana. And we saw where trash was collected on corners very neatly. I said, there must be a rule about that. You just can't throw trash in front of your house. There is a corner where you have to take it. I think I commented to somebody, I said, with all of this trash on some of these street corners, I'm amazed that I never saw a rat. I don't know. I don't think rats are allowed in Cuba. But at any rate, I didn't see any. And we going back to the point, and then I'll stop, is, the perception. I don't think that the Cuban people dislike American people. I think we're all people, and they wanted us to come and to leave with a message. And that is whatever you can do to help us, because we realize it's not the people of America, it's the government of America. They make that distinction. And so that's why I start off by saying, if you as an individual, a group, an organization, as Dr. Daniels asked us to get that word out, meet in Cuba, go there, help the economy. And because they are still operating, they're still functioning. And every little dollar we spend does help, the family. It does help the community. It does help the businesses. So I don't know. Mel might have a different perspective, but I would not say the narration. That's what I meant. That's the word I was trying to come up with. The narration, I think, is, a little slanted.
Yeah, I feel you. And I was hoping to have a video that you all made, your group made, from your trip, but we couldn't retrieve that, so we had this. But yeah, I'm aware that sometimes we can Western media can over exaggerate what's going on with people of particular people of color throughout the world. Um, uh, Mr. Foote, I was about to call you Melvin, but my mama's talking to me. Respect your elders, Mr. Foote, Mr. Foote, Brother Foote. Yeah, of course, you've been a diplomat for and supporter of African issues for decades. Perhaps you can share as well some of the things that you saw. And one of the things that I was intrigued by, you visited um, uh, one of my keen places, the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Havana and the Martin Luther King Center there. When I was there in 2003, had a great engagement with the Reverend Raul Suarez, who was at that time the only Christian pastor that was part of Cuban Parliament, a member of the Cuban legislature. I think he's well retired now. On the new pastor of that church is a person of Africa, a black man. But perhaps you can share a little bit more about that experience being at a church that was named after the Ebenezer in Atlanta, and is doing the work of social justice for years.
First, I want to thank you, Reverend, and I want to thank my good friend, Dr. Harrison, who I admire greatly. What I like about Covenant Baptist and the Christian Theological Institute is that you're so intellectually gifted. You just aren't talking about praying about it. You're talking about learning about it and doing something about it. So I applaud that, and I wanted to just get that on the record. This was my second trip to Cuba. I went there a couple of years ago with Dwayne Wickham and a delegation, but this time around, Ron Daniels from the Institute of the Black World, who's an old friend. Ron is a veteran. When I think about veterans, I think about Ron Daniels. And he pulled together this delegation of 25. I knew many of the people on the delegation, but many I did not know. I heard their name and whatnot. So it was the most dynamic delegation you could imagine. There were a lot of 80-year-olds. There were some 70-year-olds. There were some 40-year-olds. And so it came a cross-section. It was very much half of them were women, and so it was really a dynamic group that went to Cuba, and they went for a purpose. We went for a purpose to a solidarity and engagement. We clearly went there to try to be show them that we are in spirit with the Cuban people, and so it was, for me, it was a beautiful experience. Now, when I saw that video you shared, right on point. Everything I saw in that video, we saw in Cuba, and the people are no doubt suffering. There's no question about the fact that this is illegal. Why are we treating human beings like this? I heard yesterday Marco Rubio, who is of Cuban descent, came out talking about we ought to start colonization again. We're into colonization. Well, where is slavery in this process? You're into slavery too? It's just some insane stuff that's going on. And we're supposed to be the big brother of the Western Hemisphere. Turn around, you ruined Venezuela. Turn around, 2 earthquakes, thousands of people are affected right now. And what are we able to do? Throw some toilet tissue at them or something, that kind of thing, because we destroyed USAID. We don't even have the U.S. capacity to respond to crisis. So we're picking these battles. I'm not sure if they're going to fight, go to war with Cuba. Cuba told us while we were there that if they invade Cuba, we got something for you. And one thing I can say about the Cubans, they punch well above their weight. You know, you thinking that you're dealing with a lightweight, and you're dealing with a heavyweight. They punched above their weight in Africa in the liberation wars. They punched above their weight in dealing with Ebola and issues in Africa, across Africa. So one of the things that I've been tasked with is to make sure that Africa responds to Cuba, because Cuba responded to Africa. And so the challenge is massive, quite frankly. One thing that struck me while we were there, we went to a place called Africa Town. And this is mostly the center of the Afro-Cuban community. And our guide told us before going, he said, look, put your money deep in your pocket. Somebody come up to you and ask you for a coin, you'll be prepared to, you know, kind of gently. And sure enough, it was there. And I know hunger when I see it. I worked in places like Somalia, Ethiopia during the famine. You know, I worked in Rwanda during the genocide. So I know what struggle is about. And I can say that they're struggling in Cuba, and they're looking for us as African Americans to respond. They gave us a VIP treatment. We met for an hour and a half with the president. We met with the foreign affairs department. We met with the medical schools. We met with everybody, you know, across and they were open for us. They welcomed to see these Black Americans come in solidarity to help Cuba. And so it was inspiring, to say the least, but I would say that we're just at the beginning of the follow-up. And I think that your church, your institution, has a critical role to play in that regard.
Thank you for that. We'll get to that. Before I move to Dr. Weaver, those of you who are there, one of the highlights was you met the Cuban president. And I'd like to know a little bit of what you all discussed in that momentous meeting with him.
Denise, why don't you go ahead?
Well, it was, first of all, it was not a scheduled meeting, but it just sort of came about the day that we got there. We found out that we had this opportunity to meet with the president, and we did not know that we would. His first question was, how do you want to do this? Should I speak first, or do you want to ask me questions first? And so, you know, we said, no, go, Mr. President, you know, present to us, and then we will follow up with the questions, which he took questions from us. And we had to, you know, had the translation thing on our ear to hear, because he, of course, spoke to us in Spanish, but gave a whole history, I think, about, you know, how Cuba got where it is today. And then the relationship that, you know, that as Mel said, you know, we're trying to work through this, the impact that this embargo is having on the country. Everything that he said, we saw. And he talked about, I'm trying to remember some of it, Mel. I'm gonna pitch it to you because I can't remember all the details. So we're gonna go back and forth on this, but you want to help me out with this?
Yeah, I would say that it was clear that he was happy we came. You don't go to a country anywhere and have an hour and a half with the president. And he even didn't want to go then. You know, he wanted to take picture and, you know, really to show. And so it was a very much you know, very much a mutual engagement session. But he did want to brief us on the priorities of Cuba. He did want to talk about what they are trying to do to survive this onslaught. And he wanted to also hear from us about what we could expect going back to the United States. Is in fact, could we influence this Trump administration to get off of this crazy path? And so he left a lot on us. We met also with the you know, the staff of the foreign affairs, and we also met with the embassy people coming back. So they're very much counting on us to at least mobilize the African diaspora here in the United States to put pressure on our government. They ain't looking to fight the United States. They're not looking to attack the United States. They just want us to have peace and stability. That's all they're asking for. And I think I certainly got some ideals in that regard, and I'm pushing it hard on our group. But we had a number of pastors with us. We had a number of journalists with us. It was a very smart, very intelligent delegation. And so we're still trying to figure out how best we can approach it. I personally think we ought to take on Rubio. Rubio wants to be president of the United States. And one of the things I found out, if you could interfere with that process, maybe you could get somebody's attention. And so we got to find some way to leverage that to make sure that, because what he's doing is absolutely absurd. This is just like Clarence Thomas attacking Black Americans. I felt the same way about that. You know, how can Rubio be attacking Cuba when you are Cuban? You know, that's kind of
I listened to Marco Rubio's speech before the European Union, and I actually played portions of it for my interns this week. And Reverend Weaver, you would, I was shocked because as he told them, you know, and I think many of the European countries, you know, went along with it to a certain point, that, you know, America is a child of Europe, and we're all part of, you know, the Western Hemisphere, and we've got to save, you know, the Western Hemisphere. We can't be annihilated. We can't be forced to apologize for things that happened in the past, blah, blah, blah. And then he went on to talk about all the European countries all the European descendants who helped to build America, all of the European descendants who helped to build America. And he said, and who would have ever known that a descendant of Spain would be here with you today to talk about, you know, reuniting in the Western world. So he doesn't even claim Cuba. So, you know, that's what, you know, Cuba's being punished, you know, because if you've been there, a lot of what we've seen, you saw in 2000, what, one was that you said, Pastor Reverend Young, you said you went there before.
Yeah, 2003, yeah.
2003, I saw it in 2011, I saw it in 2021, I think, when I was there. I mean, I went once to a store and ordered some food. This is 10 years ago. Ordered some food and wanted to take it back to you know, where I was staying. And they said, well, we don't have any paper bags. We don't have any, you know, I'm like, how am I going to take this food home? They were like, they really tried to help me. We were able to, you know, put a piece of aluminum foil and a couple of napkins together. So, but they, you know, they've struggled through this. And I think, you know, listening to the president and just knowing that oh, that was the other part, knowing that there are people there that don't support, you know, the Cuban government, because I know we've had some challenges about, you know, political prisoners and what have you. And he said, we respect people who want to speak out against the government as long as they do it legally.
Legally.
Right? As long as they do it legally. If they do it illegally, you know, which we are having those issues here, you know, don't destroy property or whatever he's saying that folks might do that's illegal. Yeah, if it's illegal, they're going to end up in the hands of the penal system. There may be some others who have. We didn't talk about that while we were there, but they know that they're dissidents, people that don't support the government, and have no problems with they say, you know, with the demonstrations that may occur as a result of that.
I want to talk a little bit about healthcare. One of the things, when I came back from Cuba, I was praising, and I was a student at Vanderbilt University at the time, and people were looking at me crazy in Nashville when I was praising the healthcare system in Cuba, free healthcare, universal healthcare. This was the first time I had known of a universal healthcare system, and then later when I moved to the UK, I got to experience that, and it saved my life literally. Um, but I'm very disheartening to hear how the tide has turned on the healthcare system there now. Could you talk a little bit about your time there?
Well,
I must say,
I don't
I
know if
was
Melvin
very,
wants to talk about his firsthand
yeah,
experience.
I thought that
Oh, uh-oh, uh-oh.
I got close to the, like I'm a person who don't just talk in theory. I like to really go into detail. And even during the trip, Ron, they're cautious about me because they don't know I'm going to go to the other end. But I got a chance to. I had a little medical issue, and I had to end up in one of the clinics, so I got a first-hand look of it. One thing that you really saw was the people who deliver healthcare in Cuba want to deliver healthcare. They're happy to deliver healthcare. Nobody's over there talking about how much money I'm getting paid. Nobody's talking about where's the insurance card. Uh, so I had a chance to go to the clinic, and I didn't want to go to the clinic, but I went there, and I got a chance to really talk to the staff who were there and that kind of thing. But the bottom line is, when I came out of the clinic, the bill was $8. $8, and and I said, you can't even get out of the garage in Washington, at a health clinic. And so, but they got a structure for foreigners. If you fly into Cuba on American Airlines, the bill goes to American Airlines. It don't go to you. I said, well, if I need to have some major medical done, I'm buying a ticket to Cuba to get it done. And I really felt a sense of people are passionate. They want to be a doctor because they want to help people. That's their primary motivation, is to help people. We met a couple of nurses who were student nurses, and you can just tell that they're bubbling for this opportunity. You also had health professionals across the Caribbean who were going to Cuba to study. So I would again say they punch way above their weight. I think the spirit of Cuba is what the spirit of Black people ought to be. It's certainly the spirit of what those of us of the diaspora ought to be, where we really are trying to help each other and support each other. The monetary gain and the benefit is all secondary, by far secondary. I don't know, that was my take on it.
I would say though that, a couple things about that. We did visit the major hospital in Havana, and it was quite an emotional visit because the doctors talked in much detail about the struggle that they're having to care for the patients due to the embargo and the lack of access of supplies. One doctor, a male doctor, was actually became very, very emotional because he says, there's a 20-year-old that he knows that he's been trying to help who has asthma, and they don't have what do you call those?
Inhaler.
Yeah, yeah. And he said, I'm afraid he's going to die. And so, they have the infant mortality rate in Cuba was once, I think it was 4% or something like that. Now it's at 9%. And every place we went, they mentioned the infant mortality rate, that it's growing because of the embargo, the lack of supplies, and the doctors are doing everything that they can. But then, of course, with the blackouts and the electricity, going off. I don't know if this particular hospital had a problem, but you can imagine that some of the clinics do. So you're in the middle of trying to care for a patient, and then, your electricity goes out, which has happened. It's not new for Cuba, but it seems to be exacerbated at this point. And yes, we did visit the medical school. We met a student from Brooklyn, New York, and another student from California. I visited that school before. They do provide free medical uh, training, for to teach students to become medical doctors. They have to take a year or two of Spanish. They become fluent in Spanish before they can begin their medical training. It's called ELAM. And those students have been, I think they're, close to 3,000 students who've been sent all over the world to provide medical services, even in the United States. But this is free a free medical school. So, Cuba wants to give back or give to or contribute to the world, the globe. But they just need our help right now. Just like, and I'm sure, Pastor Weaver, he with his experience in other places like DRC and everybody, we're in a position where we can help, but we got to care, right? And when we look at some of these places, all of these folks look like us. The majority of them look like us. So it sounds like, sometimes you think, we know that this is intentional. It's intentional. And the word that we kept hearing in Cuba, I forgot to say that, was genocide.
Mm,
That was the word we kept hearing.
mm. Yeah, that's powerful. So many synergies between with the work that I do with Palestine, and so yeah, genocide really sums it up. It's a wholesale scheme to destroy the people. Not just morally, but physically. Dr. Weaver, sorry to keep you waiting, but wanted to bring you into this conversation, Dr. Weaver. Certainly, as Denisa said, your years of medical work and other things throughout Africa. You were not a part of this delegation, I think, but certainly what happens in the Caribbean, is often a reflection of what is occurring with people of African descent throughout the world. And so, what do you make of the situation in Cuba? And I'm hoping as well to get a little bit of theological implications from a great theologian and scholar and pastor and all of that par excellence that you are. Yeah, what do you make of the situation in Cuba, and what implications can we draw from all of this?
Well, first of all, putting aside the descriptive nature that you attach to me, Pastor, let me just say that I'm delighted to be with two friends, Denise Rolock Barnes and Mel Foote, both of whom I've known for almost 4 decades. Let me just say that, and I've shared this with Mel already, but not so much with Denise, but I'm saying it now. And that is that I'm incentivized by the trip that took place recently. No, I was not able to be there. However, there were two members of the African Methodist Episcopal Church that were. One of them was Reverend Bill Lee, who's an associate pastor at Community of Hope AME Church here in Prince George's County. And the other was the pastor of the Empowerment Temple there in Baltimore, Maryland. And I just want to say right now that in light of the work of the AME Church historically, but also what we've been doing, for example, in Congo, yes, with the school and the medical missions teams, that I'm going to go ahead and make sure to rely upon Denise and also Ron Daniels and Mel to organize a trip of members of the AME Church to go to Cuba. I met with the second secretary, I believe it is, Mel, there at the embassy on one occasion with you. And then I did another trip as well to the embassy thereafter. So this is deeply concerning to me. We've had AME churches in Cuba years ago. However, they've not been a part of the presence of the AME church there in Cuba, oh gosh, for at least 45, 50 years. But I'm just determined that I'm going to go ahead and start organizing trips, just as I've done for Rwanda and Congo, and even in Haiti, where we had medical missions projects there shortly after the earthquake, and then leading up to 2018 and 2019. But I can say for without any reservation that I'm going to be leaning on Denise and Ron and Mel so that we can have the Black church. And the reason I specify that, Pastor Mel and Denise and anyone else listening, is that sometimes there is a tendency when I see relief organizations and individuals, they don't look like us.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you're right.
And so I just want to make it a point. And having said that, just digressing a bit, when I think about the school there in Goma, when I met with the lieutenant governor at the current government regime there in Goma back in October, he was so elated when we told him about the school, and he said, "Listen, I'm so glad to see you Black Americans coming here in order to provide support." And so I just want to say that I am going to be very determined and resolute to make sure that the African Methodist Episcopal Church has a delegation that goes down to Cuba ASAP.
Brilliant, Doc. Thank you for that. And you make me think as well of one of our denominational partners, which is the Alliance of Baptists, not the Southern Baptists. They broke away from the Southern Baptists, but the Alliance of Baptists. But they have some very strong relationships and partnerships with Baptist churches in Cuba, including the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Havana that I mentioned. I'm showing right there a few pictures from their trip.
Before you move,
Yeah.
I wanted to say that that picture above is at the center that you mentioned that was part of
Yeah.
Ebenezer
Yeah.
Church. That's where we were there, and we just had a group meeting there and met with some of the workers at that center. And the Reverend who's in the picture, who's no longer with us, runs a program called Pastors for Peace. And so that was the group that we wanted to, Dr. Daniels suggested that we align ourselves with when it comes to sending any kind of support to Cuba, because Pastors for Peace still operates in Cuba.
Thank you for that. Now, I'm hoping that because Covenant people know me now, and they'll know that I can ramble on and on and on. But I'm giving an invitation now for you to begin generating questions and putting them in the chat so that we can catch them and answer them. Our panel can answer them. What do you all think? Looking at the larger picture, what is the end game for this president who shall not be named on Cuba? He just sounds like an old school colonizer. Whenever he talks about Cuba being the next nation on his list after Venezuela and Iran. Of course, Cuba's fate was tied for a long time to Venezuela because of trade relationships that they had, and since the deposing of their president, thrown into prison by, again, our government. This has caused, exacerbated Cuba's troubles. What's the end game you feel for this government, for our government?
As Mel's talking, I think he doesn't know he's muted though.
Could you mute Mr. Foot?
I'm good. As I look at it, I'm saying that Trump is 80 years old, and he's been eating hamburgers his whole life. This ain't going to go on forever, But I think more importantly, we don't want the United States to shift back to, I don't know what form it's in right now, where it's going, but all the decisions that I've seen over the last 2 years have been bad. They've been bad for us. They've been bad for Black people. They've been bad for brown people, immigrants. And so we got our work cut out. I think part of this is going to be how do we start to organize? My message is don't agonize, organize. I've always felt that you got to do something as opposed to just talk about it. I get too many of my people who just want to, I don't like this, I'm mad at that. Okay, but what are we going to actually do about it? Is a critical element here. One of the things I want to do with Covenant, we have a network which came out of our trip. And we feed each other information, see what's going on. It's really kind of empowering. I'm the poster child of putting stuff into the list, but I would like to add you as Reverend Young into that list. I think it would be good. I think just hearing you, and it's not like you're a rookie in this regard. You've been to Cuba. It's not like you don't have an idea what's going on. And so I think we have to start bridging the gap here, getting us to, so we could brainstorm, we could get together. And I can say some of the people in our delegation were darn near radical. I was like, whoa, I'm pretty radical myself, but not like that. But I think we can actually get something together if we organize and mobilize. I think the other part of it is, we've got the midterm elections coming up. They're going to be really consequential to a lot of stuff. Yeah. I think that the Republicans, the MAGA people are on their heels a little bit. This business with the housing, you don't want people to have affordable housing. And I think some of the own base, you can see Republicans themselves are seething about this. One thing is you're going to go after the Black people and brown people, but you're going after poor, even white people. So we got work to do at the political booth. We need to really engage the Congressional Black Caucus more aggressively. They got their hands full. Congressman Jonathan Jackson from Illinois, Jesse Jackson's son, had emerged as a real leader in this regard. He went to Cuba. We met with him when he came back. He came to the press conference we did on our trip. We got to support our allies who are in Congress. We got to learn politics like we never learned before. I think that this election here in Washington matters. Who's going to be the mayor, and how do you stand up against this guy? This guy don't care about local issues. We saw that with the reflecting pool. I'm so glad that thing turned green. But we got work to do on the political front. We need to definitely get the next generation involved, the young people involved, because part of the problem is we kept the young people out of the room while we discussed this stuff. We look up at we're passing on, and they have no idea what the game plan is. So we got to rethink some of this politically. How do we get ourselves engaged, not just in Cuba, but all of these issues concerning Africa and African people?
The interesting thing to note also, I would add, which was interesting to me because I didn't know this, because I think my second trip to Cuba, I went under when Barack Obama was president, or maybe the first, I'm not sure. But at any rate, Obama opened a door to opportunities in Cuba, but he did not lift the embargo. And that was the other thing that the president noted. We had a good relationship with Obama, but he did not lift the embargo. But at that time, there was, tourism was still happening. The country, was alive. It was alive. And so what this administration wants, it is a communist, led country. It has close relationships to Russia, but that was the other point that was made. Why is it that the United States can have relationships with communist countries and Cuba can't? There's such a double standard that's being used. So what is it? When you say the end game, we're not really sure what the end game is, other than Trump, the businessman who wants to build hotels and a golf course and give his friends access to the country so that they can return it to what I think created the Cuban Revolution in the first place. And so, that's a very good question. Pastor Young, what is the end game? But the Cuban people are who have said we're willing to talk. We want to negotiate. We are willing to negotiate. We're willing to sit at the table and talk about what opportunities we can agree upon. But don't force it. You know, you can't force it, and you can't use threats against us, military threats, which the president has. They're not scared, as they say.
It's kind
They're
of
not.
Yeah, they don't seem to be. They don't seem
No.
to be. I, I was going to ask, gosh. Um, well, one of the questions here
I'm
in the
sorry.
chat is our church
I'm
thinking about joining a coalition? And well, I'm certainly thinking about joining Melvin and Denise's coalition. If you all want to join in with me, you're more than welcome. But you know, I've been passionate about Cuba since since I went there, and it really did change my life. And so I am committed to doing what we can to certainly put the Cuban situation on the Cuban crisis on the political agenda. I'm thinking of how all of these we've got social democracy rising up in this country at the moment, largely because of young people, because of students who had been protesting against the war in Gaza, in Palestine and the West Bank, and all of that. That has helped to put Palestine on the political agenda. How do we how are we going to put, you mentioned Representative Jackson, and I know that there are others who are thinking about Cuba. Uh,
Senator Also Brooks is one.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, how do we start a grassroots? I'm thinking about grassroots, just like we did with Palestine. How do we make this a political issue for November? Or can we do that?
Well, one of the things that came to mind when I was there, because I think about Dr. Sullivan, Leon Sullivan, Reverend Leon Sullivan, who, you know, initiated and grew the Free South Africa movement. At least that's from my perspective. You know, Mel and Pastor Weaver may know more detail than I do, but you know, it was a movement that really did put pressure. And when Dr. Sullivan came up with the Sullivan Principles, you know, now, I mean, because of Trump, major corporations are out. You can't use an American credit card in Cuba. You can't, there's nothing there. The corporations are not doing business. They're even leaving the hotels. So I think the president now is trying to figure out how local Cubans, which makes sense, can become owners or investors in what were American hotels. But, you know, they're all gone. And why? Because Trump said so. So, you know, and there's money to be made in Cuba because we visit. So I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out. I wasn't in the head of Dr. Sullivan. I don't know how he did it. I mean, those Sullivan principles certainly did put a lot of pressure on corporations not to do that were doing business in South Africa and supporting the apartheid movement. And I don't, I mean, it takes that leader, I would think, or that voice. I'm not that person, but I would be supportive of that person. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what this whole thing
But
brought
yeah,
to mind.
yeah, the thought of Leon Sullivan is definitely a pathway. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I would say Leon Sullivan was one of my heroes. But I would also give a lot of that credit to Randall Robinson in Trans Africa.
Yes,
And
yeah.
Randall was the one who was actually going to the embassy, putting up the protest, marching. In fact, I was at Africa at the time, and C. Payne, because we got a lot of money for corporations and so forth. were leery of me going to the Free South Africa protests at the embassies. I would go anyway. I would go anyway. But Sullivan played a role. Certainly, C. Payne Lucas. Part of this needs to be documented. I personally think I've been trying to get Howard University to set up an African Diaspora Hall of Fame. So every year we could add a couple people to it, so that the next generation don't forget we had leaders, and then they can start to emulate those leaders. We had great leaders. When I look back at John Lewis and people like that, I'm saying, where are we now? And we just haven't passed the torch very effectively, and we need to do so. So some of this, we need to be small kind of things, pulling young people together in a room and start to work it out. I think church by church, community by community, we can get some things done, but we got to get started. We can't just sit back and agonize. We got to take some steps to organize and move forward.
Pastor, if I may just quickly interject,
Yes,
and I'll put this out to Mel and Denise, but I would imagine Robert Turner, the pastor of Empowerment Temple in Baltimore, will be at this event. But on the 6th of July, there is going to be what is called a planning meeting for all of the AME churches in Virginia, Maryland, District of Columbia, North Carolina. I am going to strongly recommend to our bishop, whom is a friend of mine. In fact, for over 40 years, I was his campaign when he was running for office. I suspect that he would not mind at all having this to become a part of the agenda for us. And so I'm going to personally reach out to Pastor Robert Turner and to the bishop to make sure, quite frankly, that this is added to the agenda. There will be about 500 to 700 people in that room down in Hampton, Virginia, July the 6th.
Amen.
wonderful. That's incredible. I know that we have here in the Zoom chat, the immediate past president of the Alliance of Baptists, who is also a member of the ministerial team of Covenant Baptist UCC, the Reverend Lisa Dunson here. And I know that you've been, I believe she has been to Cuba a couple of times to deal with some of our congregations there. And I'm certainly interested in connecting the Alliance of Baptists with Melvin and whoever else wants to join us in building some kind of coalition for Cuba. And I'm not sure if I wanted to put Lisa on the spot, but forgive me for doing that. But I don't know if you had anything to say, Lisa.
Let me get on. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Pastor Young. I was actually sitting here getting ready to put something in the chat. The Alliance has a very strong presence and ministry in Cuba, and we have I don't know the number offhand, but we have several congregations across the United States that are supporting the Cuban communities there. And we would definitely like to, excuse me, that was my mom. We would definitely love to partner with any organization that is doing work on the ground in Cuba. The Alliance of Baptists is a predominantly white organization, but we have a very strong anti-racism commitment. And part of that commitment includes supporting the Cuban, the country Cuba, and any oppressed people or state. So I would love to be connected with whoever we can, especially when there are actions taking place down at the Supreme Court. There are very few of us who are a part of the Alliance here in the DMV. So that weighs kind of heavy on us to try and show up all the time. So it would be great to be able to partner with some folks and do that work together. thank you, Pastor Young, for
Yeah,
mentioning that.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And as Lisa said, it's a predominantly white denomination, but and to Dr. Weaver's point, we try our best to be the black and brown presence in a largely white setting, and that can sometimes be difficult, sometimes contentious. But certainly, any way we can help to build mobilization in the Black community, the Black and Brown community, by associating ourselves with other groups like Constituency for Africa, like the Weaver School, and others. And speaking of which, actually, because Denise, you had sent you and Melvin sent me something, and I want to try to make sure I put a link in this a more practical way to support Cuba. Dang it, I've got to find it. And once I find it, I'll put it in the chat, and you can. It's a way of making donations. And Denise or Melvin, if you wanted, did you want to talk a little bit about that while I try to find it? Oh,
I saw, I think I may have shared something that I saw online, another organization that was raising money, and I got it from Taisi,
Yeah, out of
dad.
Baltimore.
Yeah. I'm not real knowledgeable about that effort. So I am what am I saying? Restraining myself from
okay.
getting too, I mean, because I think that we're going to be meeting in about a week or so to figure out what our next steps are,
Mm,
and then look at these other folks and seeing, as we've been talking about, alliances, how we can work with, or we can all work together,
mhm.
or at least have knowledge of what folks are doing so that we can then share that information. So. I did see something, and I may have shared it with you and Melvin just because
Yeah.
I saw
Okay,
it.
I'll just refrain from showing it.
Yeah,
But
okay.
we'll look forward to hearing what you all decide
Yeah.
once you all meet. We want to be on board with you, certainly.
But I want to emphasize the fact that this is not a closed loop. It's not like
Right,
it's a
right,
club.
right.
And I would encourage you. I mean, I was really impressed with the group. Some of them are, the one sister who is heading the Black Lives Matter
Mhm.
movement out of LA. Boy, she just take no prisoners, but there was a lot of people with a lot of wisdom. And I think what we're trying to build here is a network where we can help. I think that this congregation would be welcome with Ron Daniels. If we could figure out a way to get you to have a conversation with Ron, we ought to do it. I don't want you to feel like you outsiders, insiders, not at all. I'm not a Cuban expert. I wear my Cuban hat now. Viva la Cuba, but I'm not a Cuba expert. I'm more an Africa expert. You want to talk about Rwanda, Burundi, I'm with you. But I'm very much interested in my African people, wherever they are. And so Cuba was one place that always intrigued me. And so I'm now in with it, but I'm not trying to be the leader of the movement. So I want to push people toward people. And I think that this group would be an excellent partner in this process. I think if we could pull the pastor, the clergy together, just the clergy, I think we could do some amazing work feeding people, political side and otherwise. So I just want to encourage you to jump in, grab hand. Let me be a facilitator. I'm more than ready to try to facilitate the links and the contacts. Reverend Weaver and I go back almost 50 years, really. We go back, he's a Crossroads Africa. I'm a Peace Corps volunteer. And we go back and talk about our history. boy, you want to be in the room when we sit down and have these conversations. So anyway, I'm encouraged by this meeting. I'm very much encouraged.
Good.
I want to add to that too, Mel, because I was going to join the Peace Corps only because I would get angry with my father from time to time, and rather than run away from home, I'd say I'm going to run to the Peace Corps. And I would pull the application out and fill a little bit of it out, and then I wasn't angry anymore, and I put it away. And to this day, I regret that I never completed it and submitted it, right?
You
So
should have done it. You should
I
have done
know
it.
I
Yeah.
really do regret that. But you know, I feel like my life is more complete or more whole because of the relationships that I have with, you know, individuals like Mel and Dr. Weaver because of their interest in Africa. You know, my father said to me one time, you know, I never come from Africa. I'm from Texas, right? That was his attitude until he went. Until he went. And as you know, he had the United Black Fund and then he had the International United Black Fund, you know, built swimming pools in Togo, paid for rice fields in other countries. I mean, IUBF invested in the continent. And that's where my interest finally, you know, grew. And that's where I think we as Black people in this country have to think beyond the block, right? We really have to expand our knowledge and our interest, our reading, our concern. I mean, we got to take care of home first. But even if you can't do more, participate with organizations, you know, like what Covenant offers, or, you know, figure out how you can support the Pan-African Collective or be a part of the Constituency for Africa. You know, what can we do? Trans-Africa was a big force, you know, it's no longer that big force, but it hasn't gone away. You know, so there are institutions and organizations that we as just like we are a member of our church, we member the NAACP, our PTA, our community organization, and some global organization that we need to connect with. I think that's just something we ought to do. And we should care. We should care because we're part. That's why Marco Rubio gave that speech. They are afraid of what is inevitable. They are afraid of what is inevitable. You know,
Black and brown people will get together. Yeah.
and they have to understand that when you talk about people of African descent, they don't want to admit it, but they are also people of African descent.
Yeah. There are oodles of stories of Cubans who came to this country and forgot their roots. You know, they got rich and all of that stuff and claimed themselves to be white. And I guess Marco Rubio, I know that Marco Rubio comes out of that kind of culture. But it's as you suggested, Melvin Foot, he's the Clarence Thomas for Cubans. He is the Marco Rubio, the Clarence Thomas, the Cuban Clarence Thomas. But this has been for me too, and I see Dr. Harrison coming in to the fore. But this has been a remarkable conversation for me, at least. I don't know about anybody else, but does anyone have any final thoughts? This is one of those panels where you all have given us homework to do and given us an assignment to do. And so I'm certainly, for my part, I'm interested in continuing this journey that we've begun this afternoon. Does anyone have any closing remarks to us?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I want to say that God works in mysterious ways.
Mm.
And you know that.
Yes, wonders to perform. Indeed. Denise, or
I think what I just said is what was heavy on my heart, and that's something that I would encourage people, to do. Every time I go visit somewhere, any African country, I'm sure Pastor Weaver has the same, Reverend Weaver has the same experience, Mel too. People want to know, why did you go there? What did you do? What did you see? Go, just go, just go. And the world has gotten so much smaller,
Yeah.
so much smaller. You can jump on a plane and be somewhere in half a day, you know, clearly around the world, and you realize it only took me 8, 10, 12 hours to get here. So, and have the experience of a lifetime.
it helps to have a little bit of money too,
Well, yeah, it
especially when you
does.
go as a group,
That's true. That's
Uh,
true. That's
yeah,
true.
yeah.
But it's not just about money. If it was about money, uh, you know, I've been to 42 countries in Africa, and some of these places, trust me, my father, when I first went to Africa, my father said, "Boy, you're gonna get eaten by a lion."
Mhm.
I didn't know. I thought Tarzan would be at the airport to take us to the village. What did we know about Africa in 1973?
Mhm.
We knew about Idi Amin. We knew about apartheid. We knew about just the crazy stuff that goes on the continent. And for me, I give myself an A for courage just to go. But when I look back at it, I'm saying, boy, what a rich life that I have lived
Yeah.
because I've done it. So we got to pass this on. We got to get our people out of this box, thinking that this is the only place that you can have a contribution.
Yeah.
We need to become global, period. Period. We have no other choice for our own survival and the survival of Africa and African people.
Yeah, that's
If I could just chime in very quickly
Yes,
to
sir.
say that when I think about even my own denomination, the African Methodist Episcopal Church, we've truly got to live it and to be more than just hearers of the word, but doers of the word. And so that's why I must say that while I've been extremely involved with Africa and a little bit with Haiti, of course, but I must say that when the collective was created, the Pan-African Collective, that's all the more reason why we now really focus very seriously on the plight and the condition of people in Haiti. So I just want to reiterate that I'm going to make it a point that our bishop make sure that this gets elevated at that event on July the 6th. And again, I want to indicate that's to your point, Mel, and to yours, to Denise. This is not going to be an AME thing, but not at all. I just want to make sure that we are making sure that we make ourselves available, both in terms of just humanitarian support, but also to have people to go there. And so I'm very determined to make sure that very soon that we get a delegation will go down there. And so Mel and Denise, I'll be leaning upon you as well as Pastor Turner over there in Baltimore. But I just want to commend you, Pastor, and also, my goodness, that good doctor there that's with you for this wonderful, wonderful setting. This has been absolutely great. But Mel, I will just repeat what you and I talked about just the other day. Sometimes we have a tendency to be great talkers. And I'm not saying that this has not been healthy, because it has been. It's been very refreshing because it's leading towards doing some things in a very tangible way. And so, and again, I'll just echo, I think it's great when the Black church can be engaged in this. And in large measure, we haven't been as much. We certainly were, to the point that you made earlier when it came to Dr. Sullivan nationally, but also what he did even internationally with the apartheid movement. So I think it's time that we do this now for the people of Cuba, just as we paid attention to what happened in South Africa. So I'm all in.
Yeah. And me too. And Covenant, if you want to join me, come on, let's go. Let's go to Cuba one of these days. Let's go to Cuba, and Sister Denise is going to help us pay for it all.
Yeah.
Praise the Lord. But listen, all three of you, thank you so much for for everything that you bring. It's innumerable the things that you have done for our people, for the organizations that you've led, and certainly your concerns for the diaspora. We can certainly learn so much from you all, particularly as the church, because we really need to get back to that engaging with the world, instead of being so insular as we are as the church in America. So thank you all, each of you, for everything that you brought today. And I'll turn it over now back to Dr. Lakeisha Harrison.
Thank you so much, Pastor. What a rich conversation and dialogue on the topic of the current state of Cuba, the African diaspora, our role as African Americans and responsibilities to the diaspora, the Black church, etc. That is the whole point of what our conference is about every year. Because of the fact that we need to have these conversations. If the conversations don't take place, the action cannot take place. It is critical for us to be in dialogue with one another, learning from one another, about one another. And it sounds as though that's exactly what took place when the delegation went to Cuba. You heard from each other, shared with each other, about each other, so that we could figure out how we move forward together to help each other. That is the work that Jesus called us to do, to be in the beloved community. That is everyone. It's not just about your own identity. It's about helping people, especially who don't look like you, helping the people who are taboo in your culture. No, Jesus broke down all of those barriers, and that's the work that we try to do here at Covenant Baptist United Church of Christ, and in particular at the Christ African Theological Institute. And as we move forward to close our program for today, one of the things that I think is important for us to be mindful of is the fact that no work that is done is ever free. We do this work for this conference every year free, but nothing free is ever truly free. We only survive here as the Christ African Theological Institute based upon the support of our church. And our church wholeheartedly, as you can see, supports the work of CADI. But our church's work and our ministry is only made possible through donations. So if you valued and appreciated today's conference as a whole, this session in particular, we would greatly, greatly appreciate it if you could think of us as well, making a donation to our church so that we can continue doing the work of this ministry. To the best of my knowledge, there isn't another Black church in the DMV, maybe other parts of the country as well, that is doing this type of intersectional work when it comes to dialogue specifically about Africa, the diaspora, mixing policy and theology and practice all at the same time. It is not easy work, but we strive to get better and better every year and bring you compelling and impactful conversations and dialogue every year. But again, we could use your support as well. A link has been dropped in the chat that you can click on in order to make a donation. And I believe we have a slide available for the screen that will share information of a QR code where you can make a donation using the QR code, and sharing the phone number for the church where you can call, sharing the phone number that you can text in order to make a donation. There are multiple ways to give and donate and support the ministry that we have here at Covenant Baptist United Church of Christ. As we give people the opportunity to make a donation or give, I just want to say thank you in particular to our pastor. This year's conference topics and sessions and speakers were his brainchild. It has been a wonderful day, a very rich day of dialogue and conversation from our keynote speaker this morning, the Reverend Dr. Iva Carruthers, to our panel this afternoon with Mr. Melvin Foote, Reverend Dr. Jonathan Weaver, and Ms. Denise Roloff Barnes in conversation about how do you move from theological theory to practice? How do you become, as some people say, Jesus with skin on? How do we practice the work he called us to do? And we heard about ways in which we can do that for Cuba and other parts of the world and the African diaspora. So right now, I just want to give thanks to all of our participants and to our tech team and our committee and our communications committee for doing all of the hard work to bring this conference together, to plan it, to organize it, and yes, to run it. We've been working hard in the background. We also ask that you consider following our Facebook page. The Christ African Theological Institute has a Facebook page, as well as our church. And Facebook in particular for the Caddy page is where we share information about the conference participation and videos. This conference every year is recorded and made available on our church YouTube channel. So if there's anything you want to go back and rewind, revisit, you heard some good nuggets here all day. It's so many that it's hard to keep up with it all. You can go back and rewatch. You can share with your friends and families and loved ones and colleagues anything you've heard in our conference over the last several years, but of course today as well. So I just want to encourage you to continue engaging with Caddy, engage with us on our Facebook page, engage with us through the church, and of course, engage with us through giving. The giving information is on the screen now, the QR code and the phone number where you can text in order to make a donation. And then if you ever want to reach us beyond Facebook, we have a website as a church. Covenant Baptist UCC has a website as a church. And if you want to reach Caddy with questions or things you'd like to discuss or engage with Caddy about, we have an email address, and that is caddy@covenantdc.org. And you can always call the church. Our church phone number is there for you to be able to utilize. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for taking time out of your Saturday to spend time with us. And we look forward to seeing you next year. Spread the word. This is an annual event. It just keeps getting gooder and gooder every single year. And this year was no exception. Thank you and God bless you.